not to mention Yemen, Syria, Lebanon. So what should be the next steps here? I mean, a lot of people are saying, yes, it was a horrible deal, but where do we go now? Are you worried that Iran comes back with some kind of a retaliation?
Well, I'm not concerned about that aspect of it, as I think the Iranians are going to do what the Iranians are going to do, and we need to be on our guard and working with our friends. One of the reasons I disagreed with the original deal with the Iranians was that it looked to me like what the Obama administration was doing was sort of shifting their emphasis in the Middle East from our traditional allies, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, to the Iranians. And the Iranians ended up sort of the big dog on the block, primarily because that appeared to be what President Obama wanted to have happen. And when he went in and negotiated that nuclear deal with the Iranians, I always felt it was very much a part of that pattern, sort of shifting the U.S. emphasis in that part of the world. Now, you could argue about whether or not that's what he intended. That's what our friends there believe happened. The Saudis, the Egyptians, the Emirates, people who've traditionally been with us in all kinds of crises and Desert Storm and so forth. They all felt like their traditional relationship with the United States had been kicked out in favor of a growing relationship between the United States and Iran. Certainly we don't want to pursue that long term.
Isn't that why many of our friends in the Middle East were alienated? I'm talking about the Saudis, the Israelis. They were upset after we pulled out of Iraq. Isn't that right?
That's true.
Yeah.
And left a vacuum, and the Iranians have tried to fill it.
Is that the same threat that we face right now, should we pull out of Syria? Because a lot of people are saying if we were to pull out of Syria, then that just strengthens ISIS that much more. It creates the vacuum that we saw created in Iraq.
I am a firm believer, and it's not a popular position to take. Everybody thinks we've been there 17 years, we need to get out kind of thing. That's not the way I look at it. I think we have to be present in that part of the world. You look at 9/11. How did 9/11 come about? Well, you had Osama bin Laden operating in that part of the world, ultimately putting his team together in Afghanistan. Afghanistan's important to us. Who controls Afghanistan? It's important to us how those other nations fall out there. And we can't afford to turn our back and walk away and say, well, it's nasty business. We're not going to be involved anymore. I think that's a dead end for us. I think we cannot afford, given the importance of the United States, the importance of that part of the world. We have to be engaged. We have to be involved. We have to know who our friends and allies are. We've got to work with them. And we need to make certain that we don't have the kind of proliferation of terrorism, weapons of mass destruction, the kind of problems that are potentially ours if we withdraw.
And there's a period of time right now where countries and individuals and companies will have to decide, do you want to do business with Iran or do you want to do business with the United States of America?
Right.
I'm wondering if our European allies will also pull out of this deal. What's your take on what takes place?
I don't know what they're going to do. Obviously, that's we'll find out. It may well be that they can renegotiate a situation that satisfies our requirements. But I can't predict how our allies are going to respond.
But you're comfortable with what has taken place coming out of this deal?
I think that I fundamentally opposed it when it was entered into. I didn't like all the cash that was going to flow back to Iran. And as I say, I really felt, based in part on my relationships with, they go back many, many years, with the Saudis, then the Emirates and the Egyptians, that the United States was turning its back on our traditional friends and cozying up to the Iranians. And that's not a course of action you can sustain over time.
That's exactly right. And when I interviewed MBS, the Crown Prince, he told me last November, look, the hijackers on 9/11 were trained by Iran. And he was trying to say, we want to live like normal people. We want a relationship with the United States.
Right.
Do you believe in this corruption crackdown that is taking place in Saudi Arabia?
I do. When he was in Washington recently, I had dinner with him, sat right next to the Crown Prince. On my left was Bandar. He's an old friend when he was the ambassador from Saudi Arabia. Worked very closely with him during Desert Storm and so on. It was great to spend time with both of them. One of the things that struck me about it, we were talking about the reforms the Crown Prince is pursuing and the way he's, I think, asserted himself, trying to make some fundamental changes. which I wholeheartedly endorse. I think